The Dominica government and public sector union gear up for battle in new wage negotiations. And in sport, Jamaican sprint queen Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce sets new record in Grenada. I'm Ricardo Roberts, and this is Caribbean in 10 for Monday, April 15th, 2019. I'll be back with the details after the break. The Dominica Public Service Union says it will continue with planned action to press for salary increases and better working conditions. This as the government indicates it is still reviewing the union's proposal for a 10% pay hike over the next 3 years. The union's Secretary General, Thomas Letang, confirmed that the union had received correspondence from the government negotiating team indicating that discussions on the proposals could begin within the next 2 months. The letter stated that in light of the devastation caused by Hurricane Maria back in September 2017, comprehensive assessment and analysis are being undertaken that will inform government's response to the proposals. But Letang said he was disappointed the union had to first threaten industrial action just to get an acknowledgement, and he said plans outlined at a rally last week would continue since salary negotiations were not the only concern. The union says that until all the demands are met, every Friday will be declared Solidarity Friday. Now, speaking on local radio, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit said the vast majority of public servants are hardworking, conscientious people, and he agrees they are not paid sufficiently. He also admitted that there are issues that need to be addressed. New legislation to allow the Belize government to hold a referendum on taking its border dispute with Guatemala is expected to go before the Senate this week after passing in Parliament. Now, Prime Minister Dean Barrow piloted the Belize Territorial Dispute Referendum Bill 2019 on Friday, days after the Court of Appeal refused to reverse a High Court decision that granted the opposition an injunction blocking a referendum that was to take place on April 10th. Now, he said the bill is designed to ensure that the people of Belize have their referendum. Opposition leader John Bresinho maintained his opposition to government's referendum move, objecting to the decision to rush the legislation through all its stages. Now, his opposition colleague, former Prime Minister Said Musa, gave his support for government going to the ICJ, although he did criticize the education campaign leading up to the vote that should have been held last week. Musa abstained from voting on the legislation, which was passed after 8 hours of contentious debate, but indicated that his vote would be a referendum, or when a referendum is eventually held. Now, the Jamaica government is considering its next step after Constitutional Court on Friday upheld a motion filed by the main opposition People's National Party, the PNP, and struck down legislation that was aimed at creating a national registration and ID system. Now, Chief Justice Brian Sykes said the court had found the National Identification and Registration NIDS Act unconstitutional and declared it null and void and of no effect, which the PNP had been seeking. Now, the Andrew Holness administration said in a brief statement it is respectful of the court's ruling and will spend some time carefully reviewing the judgment, after which a more fulsome response will be forthcoming. And the country's main private sector groups have called on the government and opposition to immediately commence consultations on the law regarding the National Identification System. President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Howard Mitchell, said bipartisan support is necessary to settle the differences in the legislation.
Avoid taking overly critical or destructive positions regarding something as important as this. I think that what will show maturity, what will show an eagerness to be acting in the national interest is if we get together as quickly as possible and resolve the differences. And I think that's where the Attorney General will play a role, and that's where the Prime Minister should play a role, to pull together the opposing views and let us go back to Parliament with a law that conforms to the Constitution.
And under the NIDS Act, which was passed last year, Jamaicans would have been registered and would be issued with an ID card that would have replaced several pieces of identification currently in use. Those not registered would be unable to access certain government services. And stay with us, your Midday Sport is next.
Over 1,000 dragon boat paddlers and supporters from countries like Canada, Panama, and the United States gathered at the Pigeon Point Heritage Park for the 4th biannual Pan American Dragon Boat Crew Championships. The park's water conditions are exceptional. One side is famous for its clear, calm waters, while the other side has deeper, choppier waters. That's perfect for visitors who are into sports such as dragon boat racing.
So it's starting to foam there, as you can see. Now you want to throw this very slowly and gently. So now we're going to add our cake mixture to this here. You don't have to let it cool off, but just add slowly.
Looking back, it's now time for sport. Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price established a new 100 meters record on her way to victory at the Grenada Invitational on Saturday. The Jamaican double Olympic 100-meter champion clocked 11.20 seconds to comfortably finish ahead of compatriot Jonelle Smith, who was timed at 11:35, and American Alia Brown, who finished third in 10.46 seconds, the same time as Jamaica's Greyon Evans. Now, Jamaica's Asafa Powell was noticeably absent from the men's 100 meters, which was dominated by international athletes. Adam Gemley of Great Britain won gold in 10.10 seconds, while Canada's Aaron Brown was second in 10.13 seconds, and Christopher Belcher of the USA third in 10.14. Nestor Carter was the highest finishing Jamaican, placing fifth in 10.26 seconds. His teammate Nigel Ellis finished sixth in 10.31 seconds. That's Taekwondo Tracy in seventh with 10.32, and Julian Fort eighth in 10.35 rounded out the field. Over to cricket now. The Windward Islands recorded their second victory as many matches when the regional under-15 Super Cup continued in Antigua and Barbuda yesterday. They registered an easy 5-wicket victory over Jamaica thanks to another superb bowling effort. And of course, we'll get more of that story in our major newscast at 6:30. That's Caribbean in 10. Good afternoon.